Good day and welcome or welcome back to the channel. Today's topic is MIDI triggered effects. So let's remove the one I have here and let's get started all over again, maybe starting here with this little sequence. So first let's build some sort of stuttering effect. And for that we're going to add a grid, as so often, a effects grid. And now let's drop in a long delay, because the long delay is able to loop back to itself. And we also use it as a buffer to store the audio, which then will be re-triggered whenever a certain time period elapses. So the basic concept is that, here we are on 16th, here we are on 2, which means 2/16, an 8th note. We can change the division here, or we can also change the division here by, for example, pulling this handle fully to the left. Now we have 16th here, and we pull that to the left, so we get to 30-second notes. But let's start like this. And now let's set up a trigger for this delay. First, I want to go to I/O and grab one of these key on devices. And let me choose, you can choose whatever you want. Often it actually makes sense to start with a very low note, because this is outside of the range where you would play your melodies. So you can use it on a MIDI region combined with the instrument you're playing, because -C2 can then be filtered out for the instrument, and the effect will only trigger when exactly the incoming note is being played. Because it's more comfortable for me right now, let's start with what is it? An F1, I think. Here we go. So what needs to happen? First, let's go to mix, and we definitely need to switch the input depending on whether the effect is actually playing or not. So the delay goes in here, and the delay also needs to loop back on itself. But then we also need to feed the delay with the original signal. And because there's no shortcut for this, let me copy the input selector. And in default state, the signal will just pass through. It will constantly fill the buffer in this delay. And whenever the note hits, right, we switch to the second output, and that's where the feedback is going in. And then also at the same time, we want to switch that selector so that the original signal is being cut off and the output signal from the delay is being played. Now let's see if that works. Okay, nice, that works. But now I want to have other divisions like 16th notes or even 30-second notes. And I could do that by copying the delay, but it's actually not even necessary. Instead, what we will do, we will just copy the key on device and select the different notes, in this case F sharp and G. And now we can plug this into, I actually don't really know where it is, but it's a summing device. So let's grab one of these. Let's color it yellow, because logic signals in my world should always be yellow. And then let's connect these note inputs and connect this to the selector and to the selector as well. So whenever one of these notes is on, or multiple, the selector will get a positive signal and switch to the second output. Now, for the second two, we also want the modulation output. No, not yet. Duplicate it. And I want it to be triggered whenever the respective note is playing. And here in the long delay, we can manipulate or automate quite a lot of things. So I think modulating downwards is resulting in shorter delays. Well, let's see. Yep, that's already fixed. Now the second, the G1, only needs to modulate this one and this one fully to the left side. Okay, so we have a nice little setting that allows us to stutter in different quantizations, which is really neat and actually quite simple. So I figured out that it is easier to place subsequent effects in the post FX channel rather than in the grid itself. Because of multiple reasons, turning them on and off is simpler, and also you can just rearrange them by dragging instead of in the grid where you actually have to go and rearrange the cable or the wiring. So first, maybe we want to add a filter. And just for the notes here, we can choose any kind of filter, right? This is kind of an Arturia Matrix 12 filter, a mini filter, whatever you have. For the sake of the tutorial, we will stay with Bitwig devices, but you can throw in any VST that you have. So now we will still trigger that from the grid. The reason is, well, we have some sort of note device, note-driven pitch 12, like this one. But the issue with this one is, at least in theory, when I hook this automation up, this is just a C. Whether this is C1, C2, C3, C4, it doesn't matter. And I want to be able to confine everything to the specific notes I'm defining here. I'm not using that one, but I will use devices in the grid. And no, I don't want to select you. Okay. And it's quite simple because these are all daughter devices of the FX grid. All modulations can easily be applied. So let's go to the next note, which is G sharp. Then one thing I want to do, I want to turn it off and turn the device on using the modulation. And then I maybe also want an envelope which does something with the filter position. So again, I could place an envelope in here. The problem again is that this envelope would then trigger every single time, no matter which note is played. But I want it linked to only this specific note. So we'll drop this into the grid. Get an envelope, get the segments to give us more flexibility. Now let's turn off the external trigger and hook up the key on device. For now, let's join something simple. And now take this little automation arrow and apply it to the filter position. Okay, now it runs through once and then it stays at the end. Maybe I want to loop it. I want to turn off this softening here. Now let me find out why this fellow is not looping as it is supposed to. So a little addendum to this segments problem. I figured out what it is. This red area is looping region. So when you trigger it, it will then continue looping back and forth here or do whatever is selected in here. However, it wasn't present in the envelope that I had. And this happens when you remove all the dots. Now, when I add new dots, this envelope or sustained region will not come back, but you can actually reintroduce it by dragging, and just drag it to whatever dot you think should be part of the sustain. It's actually quite cool because you can exactly define what the looping region should be. Now we have the filter, and interesting is that unlike in some other, not all of them, stutter devices, you can have effects in series. You don't have to choose whether you want to stutter or a filter or comb filter or phaser or pitch or whatnot. You can have everything simultaneously. Yeah, let's start a little bit lower and maybe manipulate a bit more. Yeah, that's nice. So what next? Maybe something interesting like pitch. Pitch shifter is a really interesting device. And because it's such a nice device, let's duplicate it. And no, actually first group it. Take a macro device. Cool. Then link the first one to the grain size. Full extent. Grain to 0. Position 50% around. And then apply the pitch. Amount 12 semitones. Come on. Okay, and now make this one bipolar. And now, so now the same game for this. Now just take all of this, duplicate it, apply this modulator to the power or the on button. This one maybe to the pitch. And around 100%. Okay, let's listen to it. And of course, you can open that one up, add kind of add a new page, and then add everything you might want to modulate with your MIDI controller, because this is now all showing up on my push in this case. Yeah, really, really interesting. And of course, if I now think this one is too bright, I can just drop it in front of the filter and problem is solved. Or at an equalizer or whatever. So next, flanger. Flanger plus. Same mechanism. Turn the device on using this modulator. And now when you highlight the flanger, you get a button here that says manual override, which means we can use this modulation knob now to control the modulation instead of the internal LFO speed. So, well, let's draw something new in here. Don't know what sounds good, just have something. And I think I want to modulate this one in reverse. Problem, these are all triggered by G sharp, but we can just change that. Okay, this is maybe happening a little bit too fast. Maybe 2 cycles. Yeah. Now the new flanger. Okay, now here I maybe want something else. Which one is the LFO? Yeah, this one. Apply the modulation. Okay, I think you get the drill. What else? Maybe a trance gate. So let's grab a tool, pull down the volume, and now go to the modulators, and since we have new fancy LFOs, let's grab the curves. Reset the curve. Draw in something so not bipolar, unipolar. So very simple trance gate. Synchronize it to the tempo. Oh, I can see that some of the stuff is actually off screen. Okay. Quantize it to bar or whatever. And maybe synchronize it to the groove relative on play or the phase. Now, of course, we have to apply it to the volume. Maybe twice, oh, not 20 times, 2. Half note. Increase the number of steps. And now this is a bit more than just a trance gate. We can draw in any kind of shape we can imagine. Maybe something like this. And we can use this smoothing parameter to soften everything a bit out. Cool, this can do whatever it wants. And here we just need to copy these two, B1, activate the device, and then turn it off. Okay, that's really nice. So now let's see what we can do. For example, applying it to the entire group of devices that I have here, just because it's fun. So let's move this entire thingy here and drop it onto the group. Now, first, nothing is happening, and it might also be that you have no input selected here. I can just change that to change to all ins, and then it can, for example, no, record enable won't do the trick, but clicking here on this little icon, it has to be lit like this. Now that sounds really interesting, doesn't it? And also, when you combine everything into a folder track, it will show up like this. So if you want to, what we want to do is we want to place regions onto the master track. So you have to right click here and say show master track content. Now we can drop in MIDI regions, but when you open them, for some reason, they will open up with automation. Select it. I don't want this, so you can just switch to MIDI. And now we can draw in whatever we want for this entire group to happen, starting with F1. Now that's a bit too long. By the way, if you hold Option before double clicking, it will create a note which has the length of the division, which is quite useful. Now you realize something doesn't quite work here, because now it should stutter. Okay, let me play it. So it skips the first beat, and the second round, it doesn't start with a kick, despite it actually should, because here we're playing a kick drum. So we definitely need to fix that. And there is something I came up with. So what the problem is that when we hit the note, we immediately switch to feedback loop. But because we just hit play, there's no data yet in the delay. There's nothing in the buffer. We need to delay the switch to the second output exactly as long as the division is in here. So how can we do that? Let's go for an envelope for the segments, because these envelopes are quantized. Let me make some more space. And instead of this output going into the selector, I wanted to trigger the envelope, and then the envelope output, this one, will trigger the selector after the defined time period. So let me change the color here. I don't know why it does not change. Well, I think probably, yeah, this one would be yellow. And what do we need here? What we want, okay, let's 2. So I want a certain amount of time to pass until we switch it on. And also important, here at the end, this is the end stage of the envelope. And this is not synonymous with the beginning. I think it was in early beta versions, if I remember correctly. But now it's not. So if you just pull this up, now the end stage of the envelope will be here. However, this creates another little problem. And the division here is, well, the lowest we have is 8 notes. So we have to set this to quarter notes, which means the first half of the quarter note, which means 8 note, will be off, and then it turns on for the second. However, as you can see, this little dot here stays. So now we are constantly in the loop stage. We will not switch back to the input anymore. This is just how this one behaves. So we first, well, turn that off as well. So we need to set up a condition, a logical condition. It's an AND condition. We need, let's drop that in here. Okay. I need this segments to deliver a signal, and I also need, well, no, that's wrong. I don't need the gate. I need this summing device here to deliver a signal, which means one of these nodes is pressed and the segments is in a positive state. So let's see if that solved the problem for. Let's go to the MIDI. Make this a bit longer. Okay, that seems to work. Now we have to set it up for the second and for the third. And it's relatively simple. We already have a modulator, and the following divisions are 8th note and 16th note, which gives us 16th and 32nd note delays, respectively. So just grab one of these modulators, and best you hold down a note so that this is actually in the on state. So when I drag here, I can see what happens. It should. You have to hit the note again. And now I see a little dot here. Let me zoom in real quick. So you see this little dot here, which indicates it has now switched to the next value. And now the same thing for this one. Let's hit a note and apply the modulation. But this time we want 2 so that we switch to 16th notes in the drop down, like to here. Okay. So let's see how that works with the other delays, like so. And I realized you need to give it a tiny little bit of space between the stutter events so that it properly re-triggers the buffer. So hold down Shift and just drag it back a little bit. That's enough. Okay, that's neat. Well, now the only thing left is we can maximize this. And then, by the way, it automatically switches to the MIDI grid. Then double the loop. And now we can cook up whatever kind of combination we fancy. Maybe first 2 beats like this, and then add a filter over everything. I think this is the filter. Yeah, let's combine this. So yeah, that's it. You know, sky's the limit. You can of course use the exact same pattern to add many more effects, especially using some of your fancy VSTs. Yeah, ring modulation could be interesting, pitch shifting, phase shifter. distortion, bit crusher, you name it. Just put everything in there, save that FX grid rack, and then drop it on everything you think needs treatment. Okay, that's it for today. I hope you liked the video. Comment, like, subscribe, and see you next time.